Actually, I was going to say good evening, but it's not. It's nowhere near evening yet. What we're going to make today is going to take hours. Right? Well, not for you, because you won't be watching it, you know, live. Now you can see here, I've got a lot of onion. Okay, so part of the reason we're starting early is first we've got to get these peeled and chopped, and then it's a long, slow cooking process. Because today we're making the national dish of Ethiopia, Doro Wat. Okay, chicken stew. And the whole basis of this stew is these things. Well, actually, it should be shallot. And the reason it's not shallot is because to the average Ethiopian, these would be expensive, or shallot, sorry, would be expensive. So they would tend to perhaps sometimes use onion, plus these are easier to chop than shallots. So I've got about 2.5 kilos of it, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get them peeled, and then I'm going to shove them in my food processor and chop them up nice and fine. So that's going to take me a little while. So here's to the start of quite a long, slow dinner. Cry my eyes out now. And there you have, after you've peeled and finely chopped, 2.5 kilos of onion. Can't still make your eyes water. Now, what we need is a pan, okay? Now, although that's a lot of onion, obviously that will reduce down, because what we want to do is we want to effectively sort of dry it out a bit. So this is part of the reason it's going to take a long time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to transfer that into there, dry pan, no oil, okay? Now, that forms sort of the backbone of the stew. We're going to have chicken thighs. I'm using skinless. You can use skin on, skin off. Get rid of the skin. Cuts down on your fat, doesn't it? So it's going to be onion, chicken thighs. So I've got about 1 kilo-ish of chicken thighs. We're going to want to hard boil some eggs, but we've got plenty of time to do that. Some olive oil, some garlic, and some water, and then 2 or 3 specialities I'm going to tell you about in a bit. But first off, I'm going to transfer that into there. So they're all in there. I've got it on like a medium-ish heat, and this is where the long stir begins. Right, now obviously at the moment it's a little bit difficult to properly stir all this, okay, because we need to sort of dry this out a bit. So all we're going to do is we're now for about 10 minutes, probably going to have to take a little bit longer I think, given how much fits in this pan, okay, but we're going to sort of cook this for about 10 minutes now. Obviously no oil in here, no fat in here, so you're not going to fry these onions, but we don't want them burning, okay, we don't want them caramelising, okay, so it's just a matter of keep stirring and stirring and stirring. Got me a good stir for this dish, I tell you. It's going to be hours before this thing is prepared, okay, and that's why a Doro Wat wasn't necessarily, you find it everywhere you went in Ethiopia, but generally families only cooked it for special occasions because it takes so bloody long to make, okay. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it as we go along. We've got plenty of time, right? So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to set this timer for just about 10 minutes and just slowly stir and cook. And like the mug I am, I said, yeah, cook this for about 10 minutes. But I think because if I had a wider pan, it might have been 10 minutes. Because this is quite a shallow, deep pan, it took a while, obviously, to get all the onions going. Now you can see all the steam coming off now. I've been doing this, exactly this, 30 minutes now. But it's just about sort of drying out now. You can possibly see, well, obviously you can't see it up the top anymore. So what we're going to do now is we're now going to add in the garlic. Okay, now you can add as much of this as you like. Okay, most of which went over the side there then. Okay, just going to keep giving that a little bit of a stir just to make sure it doesn't catch on the bottom. And once all this is in there, we're then going to add some oil. So I'm just going to get the garlic in. So that's the garlic. Now you don't have to worry too much about making sure it's all stirred in, because guess what we're going to be doing soon? We're going to be doing another 10 minutes of stirring. Before we do, 125 mils of olive oil. In that goes. And now we're going to mix that all in. We'll continue on that high, medium-ish heat. Make me sweat, it's a bit hot in here. I might open a door or a window. And we're now going to keep stirring this for another 10 minutes. Okay, and obviously what we don't want to get doing is frying the onion. We just want to keep on stirring. So I'll see you in another 10 minutes. Actually that ain't 10 minutes. I thought I might tell you a bit more about Doro Wat. Now, traditionally it would start the day where the cook would go down the market, or if you're a farmer, you go and get one of our own, get a chicken, get it plucked, and then it would be cleaned using salt water and lemon, and it would be cut up into about 12 pieces, well usually 12. Found a reference to why 12, because it apparently equaled the number of disciples of Jesus. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. So they would then start all this process, getting the onions chopped, drying them out, getting it cooked. Before then they added the chicken pieces, but before they do that, they add a special spice mix. Berbere, or it might be pronounced Barbara, I think it depends where you are. Now this is a magic blend of herbs and spices. Actually it said spices. Mainly chilli powder. This is going to be hot. It's bloody hot in here anyway. But it's a mainly chilli powder, but it has cardamom, fenugreek seeds, coriander, cloves, ginger, nutmeg, cumin, and can have all spice in it. In fact, you can have more or less. And that's all ground up into a powder. And I've got 2.5 tablespoons of it there for this quantity. Quite a lot. Okay. So that's one of the special ingredients. There is another spice mix, but we're not using it. Couldn't buy it. I bought that one. Was going to make it, but I bought it. And the other one I couldn't buy. I was going to make it. Mekalesha. Now Mekalesha is another sort of multi-spice thing, but basically it's going to have nothing more than about a pinch going this amount. So I thought it weren't worth making it. So that ain't going in it. But there is a third ingredient that will be going in. And I'll tell you that, what that is. I'll hold you in suspense, because I'm really enjoying sweating over this hot pan, stirring, I tell you. So that's at 10 minutes, okay, steaming away still, moisture still coming out. Now from this point on, when we add the rest of the stuff, we've got to be careful it don't dry out, okay, so you're going to need a jug, about 1/2 pint-ish or so, well actually you can use as much as you need. You only add small amounts, small quantities, just to keep it moist. I'm using that word again, that might have to. So we just add splashes of it, because we're now going to add the Berbere or Barbara, okay, this spice powder. Okay, in that goes. We stir that in. Now, this is now going to cook with continual stirring, not for 10, not for 20, not for 30, not for 40. But we're now going to cook this for 45 minutes. And what we've got to be careful of, and we turn the heat down, but low by the way, because what we don't want to happen is the Berbere to burn. It can burn and it will make it taste a bit bitter. So we don't want that, do we? We might have to have a bitter inside there very shortly. There's right on going. But don't tell my wife because it's still well in the afternoon. Anyway, so I'm mixing this in. Okay, and like I say, we're now going to cook that for 45 minutes. But I'm just going to add, I mean, it's not an exact science, this cooking time. That's like the minimum. Hence you can start seeing why they didn't cook this routinely. So now we're just going to add a teaspoon of salt. Okay, mix that in. And then, like I say, if we think it's drying out a bit, we'll add a splash of water. Don't go too far. Right? We want it to stay like it is at the minute. Okay. And no, at the end of 45, it ain't done because we put chicken in it. Then the chicken's going in, and then there's a bit of cooking time with the chicken, and then there's another cooking time, and then there's a final cooking time. It takes a bloody long time. So I'm going to pause here for a second. Well, I'm going to pause you for a second, and then I'm going to tell you about this third special Ethiopian ingredient, which I've made my own version of. Right? I couldn't buy it. Well, I could buy it, but it weren't going to arrive anywhere near in time. So, this third magic ingredient, remember the other one I said you'd add near the end, and I ain't going to bother because I ain't got it, and it ain't really, to be honest, the strength of this stuff, I don't even bother they bother putting more spice in. I don't know if you taste it. But anyway, what we've got here is Kibe, or Kibe. Okay, nice Kibe. And I'm putting in about a teaspoon of that, and it's basically a spiced butter. Okay, a clarified spiced butter. Now, you can, if you can't be arsed, you can use ordinary ghee, or you could even just use butter if you want. But we have to do things authentic, don't we? So basically, I took some ghee rather than take butter and clarify it. I took some ghee and I added to it some, well actually I did like a bouquet garni in a little wrapping. I put a couple of cloves of garlic, I put some cinnamon stick, well, I put some cloves. What else did I put in there? I can't remember what else I put in there now. And then I let it infuse into the butter. Okay, so it's gone a bit of a brown colour. That's partly because I partly burned it. Now, there could be, for some versions of this, there is a fourth thing they add, which again is another type of spice butter, but the recipe I'm using didn't say use it, so I ain't. So, apart from the odd splash of water, and we want some more Kibe later, okay, towards the end, when we just finish off the hey, get in there, you little bugger. Like I say, I thought I'd stop flicking onion everywhere. Like I say, you just want to keep some water handy, keep this stirring, don't let it catch on the bottom, don't burn the Berbere. Add splashes of water, but essentially, apart from the chicken, and apart from some hard-boiled eggs, which we'll hard-boil later when we're doing one of the cooking changes that doesn't need stirring. So 45 minutes of this. See you in 45. Oh, we're 20 minutes into the 45 minutes. I've had a fair bit of water, okay, because it's sort of drying out. You know, at the end of that, it's a stew. And I think, I suddenly realised, I don't think I actually explained to you what Dora Wat meant, or Dora Wat meant. Doro is chicken, And wet, or wat, or what, is stew. So you can make, like I said, different versions of this stew. You know, you can have different meats in it, or you can have vegetable ones. Now, if you don't like it too hot and spicy, because all that chilli that went in with the Berbere, you can cut back on the amount that you put in. Or for a mild, you know, like a pretty much a mild version, you can add turmeric. If you're making a vegetable one, you might not want to add either. It's up to you, alright? Just depends on how spicy you like it. Probably I've underdone the Berbere, or Berbere. Probably if you got this in Ethiopia, it's known as being very, very fiery. It'll have a lot more in it. So I'm just still wetting this. There you go, a bit of water, give it a stir. I've put a pan on to boil the eggs with, even though we don't need them for a long time. I'm going to hard boil some eggs, so 11-minute eggs. Okay, and then they can be put to one side ready. I've got my chicken out. I don't think we'll be putting 12 bits of chicken in here. Okay, so really, how many long have I got? 23 minutes to go. So that's 55 minutes of stirring. So what I'm now going to do is I'm going to take my chicken and I'm going to put the chicken into it. Okay, like I said, these are chicken thighs, they're skinless. You can have the skin on if you want. Okay, totally up to you. But obviously it just makes it that little bit healthier without the skin on. And all we're going to do now is now just going to mix them in, and guess what? We're now going to time this for another 45 minutes, and we're just going to keep it agitated, i.e. stir it. We'll keep an eye on it. If it starts drying up too much and starting to catch, we add some water. See you in 45. Right, so we've got about 10 minutes, 12 minutes, well 11 and a half. About 11 and a half minutes to go before we get to our penultimate cooking stage, right? So this is cooking away nicely in here, giving it a stir. Don't need to stir it quite as much, thank God, all right? Because it's wet enough that it's not necessarily catching very easily. Got the beer ready. There. Minute to go, and then I'm having my first beer. Anyway, got some water on hand, don't need any at the minute, but might need some later. Now, what are we going to eat this with? Well, we're going to eat it with pretty much the Ethiopian national dish accompaniment, if you like. It's a flatbread, okay? And you may have noticed that yellow thing, okay, with beeswax wrap, the homemade beeswax wrap. Okay, that has been sitting over a bowl for several days now. And in that bowl is fermenting away a dough, because we're going to make some proper Injera. Well, I don't know if that's how you say it, Injera. Okay, which is a sourdough flatbread. But it's not like your normal sourdough bread, which, you know, looks like a loaf, is it? This is a very special type. You actually pour it into a skillet, so I've got a little like omelette pan, and you cook it more like, well, more like a crepe, I suppose. Now, this has been fermenting for about 3 days, but these things can take up to 5 or more, okay? And it's made with a special flat. First drink. Oh, nectar after all that bloody stirring. So, you probably can't see this very easily, and I can't really tilt it, okay? Don't look very nice, does it? You can sort of see a layer of water on top there. So what that is essentially a flour, bit of salt and water, that is then left to naturally ferment. Okay, you can add a bit of yeast, but we haven't, and it's all done it all its own. Okay, so I'm going to give you a little bit more info about how we got to that stage. I just saw me beer, I might have one. But we've got just under 10 minutes before, like I say, we get to the pulp. I've only had one mouthful and I've lost the plot already. So I'll catch you in 10 when we do the get that next bit ready, and I'll tell you a bit more about the injera. Right, so that 45 minutes is up. Just going to give it another, just a quick stir around. Okay, now we've actually finally finished stirring. Well, sort of. So what we now do is put a lid on it, and we keep our eye on it over the next hour. Okay, so that's going to cook away in there for an hour. Every now and again we just check on it. If it needs a little bit more water, we add a bit more water. Might want a little stir every now and again. Okay, now I'm just going to turn that down a little bit because I can hear that bubbling away in there. Now I was telling you about injera. Now injera is made from a special type of flour made from a seed, a grain known as teff. Now teff only grows in certain regions. You know, the water conditions need to be right for it, and as a result it can be a bit expensive for your normal sort of Ethiopian farmer. So it may well be that although he will use teff, he might supplement it with sort of other grains that he possibly grows himself, because he can't necessarily grow the teff where he is. But the teff is like a, I've got some here. It's a browny coloured flour. Okay, it's quite fine. It's a small fine seed that's ground up, obviously. Some people might say it's a superfood. It's extremely low in fat, very high in protein, high in calcium, iron. What else was it? Because of the way we ferment it with sort of natural bacteria and yeast, it's considered possibly good for your gut. I could do with that. Get too much acid reflux, me. But because it's so difficult to grow it, or it only grows in certain areas, and it's quite a low yield, because it's an ancient grain thing, it's not, like I say, readily available. And all it is basically, and I didn't bother converting it, didn't need to bother, 2 cups of teff flour to about 5 cups of lukewarm water, and about half a teaspoon of salt. You mix all that together, and then you just stand it, and sort of like the next day you mix it all back in, and what you notice is you get some of this liquid coming to the top, yellowy looking liquid, and it starts to look like it's bubbling. Okay, and you do that, you just keep repeating it for several days, stir it, cover it and leave it, and away you go. Okay, so you then end up with quite a runny dough. Like I say, it's runny up, we pour it. Okay, and we will cook that when we get to the very final stage. So we're on the penultimate stage now. At the end of this is about another 20 minutes. Okay, when we put our eggs in, which are hard boiled, and we do a little trick with the eggs as well. I should probably forget by then, because I should probably have had a couple of beers by then. But like I said, teff is an ancient grain. Okay, not really sure where it came from, but it's believed it goes back to at least 4000 BC. Okay, and the actual cooking method is pretty much, we believe, what it's always been, on like a flat griddle skillet type thing. Traditionally it was on a large circular griddle known as a mitad or mitad, don't know how to pronounce it. And archaeologists have found these mitads or mitads dating back to at least 600 AD. So we know that was an ancient way of cooking it. So, like I say, that's fermented away well there. Okay, keep an eye on it. Obviously, we want it to be sour, but it can obviously turn bad, in which case ditch it. So the thing that it ferments with is an aerobic bacteria. So aerobic bacteria are generally not the nasty ones, anaerobic ones you have to want. Bit of science for you. It's a bacillus species, and then a variety of wild yeasts. So not your standard sort of bread or beer yeast. And then it ferments away. Now quite often what they do is they collect the liquid, show off the top, this yellowish liquid, and they will use that as like a starter, not starter to eat, starter to make your next batch. So I'm going to go and relax now because I've spent a couple of hours doing nothing bloody stirring. Probably getting on 3 now, thinking about it. And I'm just going to keep my eye on that from time to time, have a beer or two, and then I'll catch you for the final stage when we'll do the final cooking and cook off the injera. So we're getting to our final cooking stage, okay, 20 more minutes. I've had it on the back burner and I'm going to put it back on the back burner, but we're now just going to add a final, well almost final, we're now just going to add our hard boiled eggs. Now this has been bubbling away, okay, there's a bit of liquid in there, it should be enough. What we do is we take a knife and with each egg we make a cross in the end. Well, you can't see that, can you? You can do it in both ends if you like, and the idea of that is it helps the egg absorb the flavours. So you normally do 1 egg per portion. There's obviously more than 2 portions in here. Okay, you get extra portions we made. So I'm putting 4 in. Okay, now in they go. And then I'm just going to mix them in. And then we're going to put the lid back on. Okay, and the chicken's nice and cooked, it's falling apart. Okay, I'm going to put the lid back on, where the lid's gone, and put it back on that back burner, and that's now going to cook for about another 20 minutes. Now, this is where we're now going to cook our injera. So I've got my dough mix here. Now, if I wanted, I'll skim off some of that liquid, like I said, to use as the, what's the name? The starter for another lot. Well, I'm not likely to make any more. So what I'm just now going to do, I'm just going to give it another mix in all together. It looks like clay, to be honest. Okay, quite wet this. Okay, possibly a little bit too wet, but who cares? So we're just going to mix that in. Now, in Ethiopia, like a lot of countries, you always ate with your right hand. And what quite often happened with injera, they would have a big communal one. I'll tell you this, I can't remember now. Been doing this for so bloody long tonight, I've forgotten what I've said. You would sort of like take off your largest bit for you, and then you would break off bite-sized pieces, which you would then use with your right hand to scoop up or whatever you was eating, and then eat it. Now, because it's a fermented, I've just sprayed that with a little bit of spray. Because it's a fermented dough, we can actually pour it, and we're going to pour it like we're not going to make an omelette. Okay, and I've got a lid somewhere. I've got my lid off my other big bag. It's only one big enough. Because what we're going to do is, when that's up temperature, I'm going to pour that batter in there, and we're just going to cook it. And we only cook it on one side. Okay, it wants to be quite thin. I need a beer after that. So I'm just going to let that get a bit hotter. So I'm going to take a ladle full of this, okay, and I'm just going to pour that in a little bit more, just to make sure I've covered all the base of the pan, and then we let it cook. So the surface against the bottom of the pan, the mitad or mitad, will be smooth, but if this is fermented properly, the top should look a little bit porousy, a little bit spongy, although this doesn't seem to be still quite as bubbly as it was earlier. So we just cook that. When we're cooked, where's my lid? When it's sort of looking like it's sort of cooking, we're just going to cover it so that it just finishes up cooking the top of it, and then we're going to remove it from the pan. Okay, it looks like it's getting up there. So I'm going to put the lid over and we'll just start cooking them. Okay, so I'm now just going to turn that out onto the plate. Okay, I might need a little bit more spray with that one, and we're just going to continue doing that. Now what I'll do is I'll roll it up, the one that I finished. Okay, we'll roll it up and then we just cover it with a dampish cloth so it don't dry out. Okay, so we're just now just going to make a few more. Okay, the Dora Wat is just going to be finishing off shortly, and our final touch, and then we'll be ready to eat. And the reason we're a little bit later than we should have been, the wife wanted longer. Actually, I thought while it's cooking, we'll taste some of this injera. Definitely sour. You get the sourness coming through. I should imagine it's a little bit of acquired taste. It's quite sharp, and that's all from natural fermentation. Probably get food poisoning, right, so that second one's on the go. I'm just covering that. Oddish taste, apart from, you forget the sourness. Wouldn't say it tastes sort of bready really. Can't really think what it tastes like. But that's your typical Ethiopian and other African countries flatbread made from teff flour. So we're entering our final few minutes. Finally, what I'm going to do is take about a tablespoon of the Kibe, clarified butter, spice butter. Okay, and we're just going to, now if we had that other spice, the mekalesha, we do a pinch of that and we put the two in here, and we're now just going to cook that through for a few minutes until that Kibe is all melted in and all mixed in. Okay, the chicken's nice and tender, it's all falling apart. The eggs have taken up a bit of colour because they've obviously taken up a bit of the sauce, and it's probably going to blow your bloody head off. The injera are cooked, although I don't think the wife's too partial to them, too sour. Definitely an acquired taste, unless I've done them wrong. Probably get food poisoning, I don't know. Anyway, so I'm just going to give this a couple of minutes and I'll serve up and show you the final thing. So here we go. So I've got me a bit of injera on the side. Make sure every portion's got an egg with it. But let's just try a bit of this chicken. It's going to be bloody hot because it's been boiling away for ages. Not quite got the chilli hit immediately. A little bit of an aftertaste. Spot all that spice and everything else that's in there. We've got some sweetness from the onion. I think if I made this again, definitely a bit more chilli coming through on that. But if I think to be a bit more authentic, I think I'll chuck a bit more of that Berbere in. But very nice. I should be eating this right-handed, bit of injera, scoop it out with that, eat it with that. I'm using a spoon, and it's nice. So, Ethiopian national dish, Doro Wat.